Excuse me. Hardwood, thank you very much, says, it bothers me that LeBron and NBA are not supporting Hong Kong, all in the name of money. It's quite simple. Can you expect an entire corporation that has countless employees and its spokespeople, its players, can you expect them to all stand up in unity and say, enough greed, we need this certain percentage of the Chinese, we don't need this certain percentage of the Chinese market. Maybe if we pull out or we make our statement in solidarity, maybe it will actually touch the hearts or fans or even push them into a direction of looking at a different perspective. Can you imagine if the entire NBA stood up and said, listen, this is enough. We can't completely alienate 7 million people in Hong Kong and the values they stand for, which should be the values that we have as well, growing up as Americans. The idea that everyone is equal, the idea that people have the right to their own opinion, religion, everything, all these things that Chinese people don't have within mainland China. Can you imagine if they all stood up and started supporting that? There's absolutely no way that the board of directors and the people actually controlling the money have their hearts in that much of a right place to completely forfeit that market, right? So it's disappointing and it bothers us, and as it should, the people that are actually sympathetic to this situation. But what do you expect? I mean, like, give me a list of 10 corporations that are completely without moral reprehense, right? Like, completely without wrongdoing. Corporations, by and large, by their nature, are structured for profit, right? And if the profit means, we can say, selling your soul to a country that completely abuses, brainwashes, and treads on their own citizens, do you think in the real world, in a real situation, that's even a possibility, that these companies would think twice about this? The only thing, and to finish off on your statement here, is the only thing is that people can hope for is that there is enough pushback amongst the customers that actually matter. And I mean this from a purely business basis. An NBA customer, someone who buys merchandise, NBA who pays for the channels who allow them to watch the games, the people who buy the tickets to the games within America, I believe are worth over 30 times more than the average NBA customer in China, right? So if you have an American customer that feels alienated and does not want to support the franchise anymore, that loss of customer is like losing 30-something Chinese customers. The problem is, this is not a democratic company. Corporations are not necessarily democratic, right? So you have a few people at the top that are massively profiting from the China side. There will be a team of people in control of the China market. They have a lot of influence in the company, much more than the people below them. So you're in a situation where you have a few people, I don't know how many, but a few people in charge of the China sector that are fighting tooth and nail to make sure that they get to hold on to that, instead of being the moral character and saying, you know what, maybe Chinese people are human. Maybe they do deserve to have their own opinion. It's not forcing American ideals down their throat. It's allowing them to have access to different opinions. And this is something that gets me so pissed off when I have debates and arguments with people that have never had any sympathy for China at all in the past, but they like to pull this rhetoric that, China's culture is different. You can't just go out there and criticize the way that the country runs because they like things differently. And it's just the most infantile excuse I've ever heard, and it's something that boils my blood because I have an utmost deep love for the people in China, especially the people that are my freaking best friends, people that are my family, people I talk to every single day. I speak Chinese. I actually know the country, right? When people go and claim that, they deserve to have their own system, it's the most immoral thing you've ever heard. It's basically like saying, Chinese people are not human, and I support that ideal, right? They deserve to have a completely authoritarian government that doesn't allow them to say or do or participate in the international sphere. That's what you're saying, right? So, I totally agree with you. It's super disappointing, but we can only hope that the average consumer is aware of this kind of stuff. And that's why I put out this video. Is when a company does make a statement, it's unfortunate, but it's a lot more powerful than the average man on the street holding up a sign. So the hope is that these companies can look at their very, very profitable consumer base, have a very big dialogue and say, listen, guys, we have a chance to make a change here. Is that going to happen? I don't freaking know. Cool. Teresa Wong says, do you have a favorite restaurant in Shenzhen? Shenzhen's a great place to eat because everyone is from different areas of China. If I had I'm not going to say a favorite restaurant, but there's an area that's all street food and seafood barbecue. I absolutely love it. I believe it's actually of all places, in Shaojing, which is a very rundown and pretty gross area. But they have this massive street with tons and tons of amazing street barbecue. You can just sit down at any of the tables and get beers and all that kind of stuff. So check out Shaojing, right downtown there. Ralph says, super chat for super hair. Thank you very much. I finally got a haircut. Enough of you complain. You said enough of the frizzy, weird, somebody said my hair looked like an erection or something. I didn't do it for you. I did it for me. M. Gray says, where are you staying during the mayhem? And do you think the opinions of Chinese foreigners living in the U.S. of the protests? Believe it or not, I actually had the opportunity. Oh, by the way, I'm staying in L.A., but I'll be headed off somewhere pretty soon, a secret location called India. I'm going to be doing some stuff there. I'm actually all around the place right now. We've set up a little office in LA, and we've been doing some of our editing and shooting there. But we're about to pick up and head on to different pastures. I'm going to say greener pastures, different pastures pretty soon. But we plan on hitting a bunch of countries this coming year after Winston has his first kid. Thank you very much. The opinions of Chinese foreigners living in the U.S., if you have mainlanders fresh off the boat who are not actually living here or just in America, most of them will be completely pro-Beijing, still consuming the media that they have back home. And there is a huge outlet for that, too. I mean, you can walk down any New York City street and get China Daily in English or Chinese. So that the outlet for Chinese media still exists. But the people, the Chinese people that have stayed in the U.S. for long enough are pretty decoupled from the CCP. The Chinese people that I know, not necessarily grown up here, but have spent a good amount of time in America, are very switched on as to what's going on and not sympathetic towards the Chinese government. But some get homesick for a lot of attributes of China, as I do as well. So I actually find that the people I most easily get along with in America are not locals. They're Chinese people that have been in America for like 5 or 10 years, kind of like how I was in China, because there's so much dialogue that we can have with each other. George, Activision and Blizzard and the NBA virtue signal 24/7, yet they yield for the CCP money. Actual people are being oppressed. Double standards, 100%. I mean, when you do this virtue signal calling, all this kind of stuff, like, I think a lot of people see past that. I think we're moving past the whole like overzealous PC culture that we live in today. I think a lot of people are I don't want to say waking up. It's too tropey. A lot of people are getting over it. It's a phase. Companies will say whatever they want. I mean, remember the Gillette ad? Companies will say whatever they want if they think it's going to turn a profit. And a lot of times it backfires, like in Gillette's case. I don't know if people are still talking about that, though. Thank you very much. Do the majority of mainland Chinese believe that Taiwan actually belongs to CCP? Absolutely. Oh, that's like you can meet a very, very open-minded person in mainland China. Pretty much everyone is going to agree that Taiwan is part of mainland China and belongs to the CCP. I don't think you'll find a whole lot of dissenting opinions in that sector, even amongst the open-minded people. That's how far the education has gone. Xiao Mo Sushi says, I'm reading it like it's in Chinese, sorry. Are you familiar with the subreddit Sino? What do you make of it? I think I got banned after one very innocuous comment on there. There's 2 spheres of China information on Reddit. There's our China, which has a lot of China expats, like people that are either living there or have lived there, have a pretty good finger on the pulse. Like, they kind of understand how China works. It's also a real big place for people just dumping garbage memes, like Winnie the Pooh memes and stuff. But Sino is the other side. It's mostly Westerners that are very pro-CCP, very pro-censorship, which is bizarre. you have there's that one guy, his name's like Alejandro or whatever, I think he's from Spain. He became like a North Korean citizen and has sucked up to the party and lives in North Korea and runs like tours and stuff. I feel like it's a bunch of Alejandros running around Arcino. They will do anything to post anti-West, pro-CCP material, and you will, honestly, if you want to give it a shot, I'm not calling to brigade, but go read it. Go to reddit.com/r/Sino and just try to post something. Like if you're interested, do not try to spam the group, obviously, but try to post something if you actually want to participate in conversation and see how quickly you get banned. It's pretty insane. Chipicus S. Why is China in the UN Human Rights Council? You really got me. China's pulled the wool, or the CCP has pulled the wool over people's eyes for a very long time. There's been a language barrier, there's been a cultural barrier, there's been a situation where the average Westerner doesn't care enough about China to look into things. And again, it's pretty sad, the world we live in, but it takes pop culture for people to start opening their eyes to this kind of stuff. So you're going to see a very, very interesting international relations development over the next few years with China, depending on which path they take, because it looks like right now the current leadership is really clamping down, and that is not going to gel, especially with the new recent events that are in people's minds. AEY says, should we be worried if Han Kuo-yu becomes the next Taiwanese president? Mark my words, he won't. AEY says, any Yang gangs in the house? Well, you can answer that yourself. I've been doing a little bit of research on him. He's a very interesting character. Seems very likable. But yeah, I don't know enough to have an opinion yet. Xi Jinping's daughter is studying in Harvard, USA. Why not a Chinese university? Isn't that just pure hypocrisy? All of this propaganda being pushed on the average citizen saying, stay in China, China's the best, you need to contribute to a better China, blah, blah, blah. And then the actual chairman's daughter is in America. Is that not hypocrisy? Our Chinese universities are the best. By the way, go to Harvard. It's very interesting, to say the least. Steven says, Taiwan number one. Taiwan number one. Agreed. Taiwan is probably one of my favorite countries in the world. Tom O'Connell, how is the wife handling everything going on about China? She's much more educated than the average person because she studied in Macau for 7 years, and also because she has worked in a Chinese company and knows how things actually work. She's got no love for the actual, like I say, leadership, the actual oppressive nature of mainland China, but is still very pro-China in terms of she's Chinese. She loves her country. The country is not the government. And very few people, like my wife, have been able to separate that. And it's disturbing, and it's scary as well, because people you know and love can turn their backs on you very quickly and leave you blindsided, thinking like, how did a political argument, not even argument, how did a political change allow you to change your opinion about me that fast? We're friends, you know. So yeah, she's fine. Are there any companies that actually have stood up to the PRC? I'll actually get into that right now. That's a really good point. Let me pop over to my picture button. Next, we have South Park would be the first example. South Park, we already explained this in the beginning of the episode, banned in China. They stood up to the government. They talked about, some atrocities that happen there, what Western companies do to capitulate to China. And they actually put out this, if you guys haven't read this yet, I might as well read it. They put it out an apology, kind of like all these other companies did, except theirs is extra delicious. Official apology to China from Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Like the NBA, we welcome the Chinese censors into our homes and into our hearts. We, too, love money more than freedom and democracy. She doesn't look like Winnie the Pooh at all. Tune into our 300th episode this Wednesday at 10. Long live the great Communist Party of China. May this autumn's sorghum harvest be bountiful. We good now, China? It's probably the best thing I've ever read in my life. I love using sarcasm and humor in a way to combat this, because it's just it's lost in translation. It's great. And these guys are really cool for doing this. But yeah, they did something very important, and I hope they realize that. This one, I want to call this one out. Red Bull put out this thing. It said Zio, which means freedom. They put out this, I think it was only artwork a long time ago, And a lot of people are claiming that they put this ad out to support Hong Kong protesters, and that's not true. It's very misleading. Not saying that they don't support Hong Kong protesters and are anti-CCP, but it had nothing to do with that. Very interesting story about Red Bull's relationship with China, though. I'll get into that at some point. Thank you. This next one is Ubisoft. Ubisoft is the French video game developer. They make Rainbow Six Siege, all those games and stuff. I don't really play a whole lot of FPS, but they've said no. They said they were going to tone down some of their content, get rid of gambling, get rid of some of the sexual references, get rid of some of the blood spatters and skulls and things like that. They said no. They said, we're not going to do this. This is our intellectual property. If you want to sell it in your country or not, that's up to you. So that was one that stood up. This is not a company, but the city of Prague deleted its sister city status with Beijing. Effectively not recognizing the one China policy. They've been messed around too many times. They think that it is immoral to do such a thing. And it's not the Czech government, Czech Republic, whatever you want to call it. It's not the government saying this, it's the Prague government decoupling. And it's a pretty big statement. China, in retaliation, canceled all their Philharmonic orchestras and all this kind of partnership stuff that they did. So that was a big thing. Epic Games, another game company, as soon as the whole Blizzard scandal happened, they made a statement supporting players' free speech. And they said they won't get punished based on these topics. So at least Epic Games is showing that they won't bow down. It might be just to protect themselves from getting active political protesters on their platforms. But again, very different than what Blizzard did. Immutable, this is a Surrey Hills Australian, I believe it's a blockchain developer, but they offered to pay the winning prize money to the Hong Kong guy that got banned by Blizzard, Blitzchung. And they also got cyber attacked, presumably by China. So that was kind of interesting after they made that offer. And the last one is Picari Sweat. They actually, this is a bit weird. This is like self-censoring in the other way. Picari Sweat, you guys can laugh. If you haven't been to Asia, this is a ubiquitous drink. This is like Gatorade, but for Asia. And they literally call it Picari Sweat. And it kind of looks like bottled sweat. So that's kind of gross, but it tastes pretty good. It's kind of lemony. Very similar to Gatorade. So basically, they pulled some TV advertisements. It's a Japanese company. They pulled TV advertisements after being accused of being pro-Beijing. So in the other way, people were saying they were being pro-Beijing, pro-CCP. So they're like pulling it. They're like, absolutely not. We're not going to air this stuff if people are going to associate us with the CCP, which is kind of interesting. Cool. Thank you. I'm going to go back to your questions real quick. United Way stood up against China, right? Actually, I'm not sure about that one. Thank you for giving me something to look at right after this, though. Next, what do you think will happen to Hong Kong when one country's two systems expires in 2047? Well, that's the situation, is that China has been kind of pushing this thing like, well, we have a 50-year agreement to give China sovereignty. Hong Kong sovereignty, to let them have their own legal system and borders and law proceedings and judicial system and freedom of speech and blah, 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 blah. Financial freedom. The fact that they tried to overstep that and kind of accelerate that process, a lot of people are saying, well, that's the natural thing to do. They're going to be reabsorbed by 2047 anyway, right? So why not kind of overstep your boundaries a little bit to kind of make that transition a little better? Because if it just wham bam, thank you ma'am, 2047 happened, and they're like, by the way, now you're just part of China, obviously that would cause a lot of unrest. So it's almost like a preemptive massage to make everyone in Hong Kong ready for that transition. But it's backfired, right? So now it's to the point where Hong Kong people aren't saying, well, 2047 was inevitable, we're going to go back to Beijing. Now they're saying, well, we need to be either, a lot of people are not saying separate, but we need to have inalienable rights protected and talk about the idea of a future without Beijing. So it's kind of backfired in that respect. Next one is a Chinese comment. It says, 你好，是美国是在学习中文的美国人。 我想问你一下，你觉得上美国的大学还是中国的大学最好？我想专业在 Okay, I don't need to read all this to you guys in Chinese, do I? Basically, this is an American person that is learning Chinese. And he or she wants to know that if he should be studying in the United States or in China. And he wants to study international relations. And he thinks that maybe America is the best for this. And can I give him positives and negatives? If you want to understand China, you need to be in China. I think that's kind of a key feature of international relations. However, I would never recommend someone to spend any large amount of time in China at the time being. I would feel guilty of that. Travel, go there for your, maybe to check on your company or whatever, business you're doing. I wouldn't recommend studying there for a long period of time. I'd give myself like a year limit, just in case something happens. I'm not saying anything will, but the current climate for somebody who is not Chinese in China is not the most positive of experiences. However, if you did want to understand and contribute to international relations, being in China for a good period of time would be very beneficial. I'll leave that to your discretion. The quality of education and legitimacy of education that you'll get in America is streets ahead of anything you'll get in China, though. So I'd almost say like go for a cultural experience to figure out how things work. Maybe do a couple classes, but make the backbone, the base of your education in America. American universities are much, much better than anything you'll get in China. Cool. Mao CCP killed more Chinese than the Japanese did. That is a fact. Oops, I didn't know you were going to read these super chats. You can skip mine. Well, I just read the one I was supposed to skip. Somebody said $9.99 and said 10. I like the marketing. That's very good. I appreciate it. Liberal Taiwanese Chinese Canadian here. Last time I went to Toronto for a subscriber meetup, I met a lot of Chinese Canadians, super switched on. We had some great chats, and thank you very much. I love what you say about Chinese being a different excuse. I've heard it so many times. I'm Chinese blood myself. Family means a lot, but not over China or the party. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. You can have your familial ties. You can have your cultural values. It's a wonderful thing. It's something that's been preserved in democratic Chinese society. Chinese Americans, Taiwanese people, Hong Kong people. These people have preserved these attributes much over greed or blind nationalism to the party. So it's difficult because I'm treading a very thin line here. I can talk to maybe a poorly educated audience of Americans at some point. I'm not saying Americans are poorly educated. I'm saying there is going to be a subset of people that might be poorly educated on international affairs that would watch a video of mine and be like, whoa, screw China, Chinese people, right? And that's just literally the polar. That's why I get so nervous doing this stuff, is that it's the polar opposite of the message that I want to have. I don't get to dictate how China is going to run itself, but I like to spread some awareness that Chinese people are people and deserve to have their own values and human nature and opinions, right? But when those values and opinions are completely dictated blindly by someone that maybe shouldn't be giving those values to that person, I find it morally reprehensible. So separating the government from the people is of my utmost concern and something that bothers me every single day. Is a man who never eats pork bun ever a true man? I'm assuming you mean cha xiao bao. Yes, you are not a man if you've never eaten a pork bun. Unless you can't eat pork. I don't know. Thank you. Chibicus. The Belt and Road Initiative eerily mirrors the Lord of the Rings plot. What part of upstate are you from? You're right, Pooh was missed opportunity. I'm from somewhere between Syracuse. I'm going to say, I don't like to pinpoint exact locations. I'm from a little south of Syracuse. Yes, it is. The Belt and Road Initiative is literally like Lord of the Rings, isn't it? That's insane. Someone needs to jump on that right now. Thank you. How is Wing doing? Wing is my cousin in Hong Kong. She's distraught. I don't want to air her anything. There's a reason she hasn't been on my videos, but it's way worse in Hong Kong than you might think. Hardwood. What about Joseph Tsai, born in Taiwan? raised in the USA and supports the CCP. Absolutely. You're going to find, again, I think Joseph Tsai is even a bad example because at least people can look at him like a Chinese person, right? People on the surface will look at him as a Chinese person. There's plenty of Caucasian, African Americans, Latinos, Latinas. There's plenty of people that are quite sympathetic towards the CCP. And you saw the same thing in the Soviet Union. You had a lot of Soviet Union sympathizers back in the day. It was not the majority. But these people are even more vocal now because they have a platform to spread their message, right? If you are in the CCP's pockets, you will get the comfort of the fact that you can be in China with impunity. You'll probably get monetary rewards. There is incentive on that front, but there's also a huge risk that the Chinese Communist Party will dump you as soon as it's convenient, or if you make one mistake, right? It's kind of like being a drug dealer, right? Like you can try to become some drug kingpin, but all you have to do is like slip up once or start doing business with the mafia or something. It's the same thing. The absolute insidious nature of how that government works, your mind would be blown if you could kind of see some of the inner workings of it. So it's a very nerve-wracking position to be in. As for the average person who is sympathetic to the CCP, I mean, isn't it just cool to be different, right? You'll see people doing this all the time. I mean, it's the kind of people that in American universities and things like this that are fervent communists, but they can't even clap in their meetings because people might have anxiety. It's like the actual revolution of communism and you can't clap. You know what I mean? Like, how would you survive a revolution? What is your revolution here, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that you'll see them more, people that support restriction of speech and kind of support China's authoritarian rule because it's, supposedly gets things done quicker, more efficiently. But the problem is although a romantic idea to have a one-party state to get things done to improve infrastructure, you don't see the stuff that I see. You don't see what happens to the roads and bridges and people and human trafficking and every single facet of this society. You didn't see what I saw. You only see the People's Daily. You see the CCTV, immaculately produced soft power propaganda. You didn't see the absolute toll it takes on humanity. Burn victim children laying there without limbs so that mafia bosses that pay off communist officials allow them to put their disfigured children on the street begging for money. You haven't seen that stuff because it's huge. It's rampant. And that's just one tiny facet, So, I mean, don't ignore these people. You can get people into dialogue, but just keep in mind, it might be romantic to sympathize with a massive easy mode nature of government where you don't have to think about it and it just works and everything is cozy. But just keep in mind, that's actually not how things are working. Restricting media, restricting crimes, restricting atrocities doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And nobody starts complaining until it affects them, which has affected a lot of people around me. So that's something I'm very passionate about. Thanks again. # Bruce Lee from Jason Stork. Thank you very much. And Dopefishy says, CCP doesn't like clapping cheeks. Probably not. Probably I don't think they're into that thick nature. I want to say thank you so much to everyone that was tuning in. This is a bit of a long one. I also want to say it's super important to mention the ADV podcasts. That's with an S. ADV podcasts every other Thursday. I talk about this stuff with Winston, like straight up. We talk about every important Chinese current event and analyze it and give our opinions on this thing. So if you haven't subscribed to that channel, please do. Go to youtube.com/ADV podcasts. That's ADV like adventure, podcasts with an S. Subscribe to that. Make sure you're ready for our every other week podcast. It's fantastic and it's a great time. We get to chat with you guys. Super interactive. I do want to remind you guys that I'll be back, normal schedule, a normal video next Wednesday. You can watch Serpent ZA, another China perspective, every single Friday, and ADV China, which is our motorcycle talk show on two wheels. You can watch that every single Monday. So we got 4 channels, working on another one soon, actually, completely different stuff. But I want to say thank you so much to everyone that participated. Thank you to Hardwood for saying thank you, Sea Milk, for exposing the truth. And I will catch you on the next one. Now I got to do this awkward part where I stop streaming.